Hello and welcome to the first ever Britsdontjump podcast. With me, Nathan Doyle, I'm your host. We're going to look to navigate through the world of basketball throughout a long series of episodes, hopefully. We'll stick with Super League basketball, Super League basketball women, and maybe drift in and out of the WNBA and NBA if we get a chance. We're going to try and keep it PG. That is the aim. It's going to be a family-friendly show, but if you can't tell by my accent, I'm from a place in between Sunderland and Newcastle called Washington. So people contemplate us being scummy, but it's not quite there, but a few words might come out my mouth, but we'll try and avoid it. Firstly today, I'm buzzing with this guest, our first one on the show. I'm going off his Twitter bio. He's quite the Swiss Army knife of people, by the way. A Rugby League journalist, a commentator for Sheffield Hatters, and what I'm curious about is a part owner in AFC Wimbledon. Now that is a big shout, by the way. So welcome to the show, Ollie Mitchell. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you very much for having me on. It's an honour to be the first guest in the series.
Well, I'm sure we'll try and get you on a few times as well. Don't worry about that, mate. We'll start off just away from the basketball a bit. What is the crack with the part ownership in AFC Wimbledon, if you'd like to talk about that a bit?
Well, it sounds a lot better than it is, I'll be honest with you. You know, the history of the club is Wimbledon FC was taken over by people that didn't necessarily have the best interests of the club. The whole hoo-ha about moving to Milton Keynes, Wimbledon fans said, well, that's not how this works. Created a new club, AFC Wimbledon, which means the club to this day remains fan-owned, fan-operated. So if you're a member of the club, there's a certain membership that you have, which means you own the club, you own the foundation, you own the stadium, and everyone owns exactly the same amount, and the only person that's sort of higher than anyone else is the board that's voted for by the fans. So it's just a nice little memento of the fact that the club is such a unique one, and that anyone can be sort of at the same level in terms of owning the club. Yeah,
100. And I think back in the day as well, there was so many one particular fan with a bit of money would own the club, wouldn't there? It was nice. It's before all this Middle Eastern stuff come in, and obviously Roman Abramovich took over at Chelsea, and all that money was pumped in there. I just think the FC Wimbledon has a nice feel about the club, and I'd be surprised, except MK Don fans, I'd be surprised if everyone didn't want to get involved and enjoy watching them play football and rise through the tiers a bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, the clip of the win against Milton Keynes, a last-minute winner from Ronan Curtis, I mean, it's just one of the most famous clips of EFL football you'll ever see. And I think everyone kind of buys into that idea of everyone having a stake, and it kind of being the good guys against the bad guys.
Yeah, well, nobody, if you look at the National League and the Football League, I think it's just as much as Sunderland have just been promoted to the Premier League, I will get that in there quick. The Football League's nice. It's got a nice feel about it, hasn't it? It's what we'll mention in a second, a tribalistic country where we all seem to love football. Kind of the Football League holds that a bit more, whereas you've got these American owners coming in and you lose that feel in the Premier League a bit, I feel like. But
for sure.
Like I say, moving on, in a nation obsessed with football, how did you find yourself come along to British basketball or basketball in general?
It's a hell of a story, and it only started a year ago, and it's been unbelievable. Essentially, at the university, we have our own student media, and we got involved with the Hatters a couple of years back, streaming the games, because there's the licensing, the TV licensing with the men's league. It was Sky, now it's DAZN, but the women's league hasn't had that, so all the games, it's now a league requirement that they're all streamed. And basically, people said, right, we'll get some comment, a really good stream for the Hatters, and the person that was supposed to be doing it the day before pulled out, and I said, right, I've done some commentary before, I know sport, I'll see what I can do. And I went a bit crazy on trying to work out what was going on with the sport and all the players and everything. I'm a big stats man, and you'll hear plenty of that, I'm sure, in this. And there were loads of people going, I didn't realise you were so into basketball, you were fantastic. And I said, I had never been to a game before in my life.
Pure research.
Absolutely, yeah, it completely was. And across this year, I've been massively into it. I've been trying to engross myself in the game as much as possible, because I've been continuing the Hatter stuff, and it's been absolutely fantastic. So yeah, it's been a year of learning on the job, engrossing myself in the league, watching games, across men's and women's, and here I am, having done a whole year and had an incredible, I couldn't have expected the year that we've had at the Hatters.
Well, I've got to say, I don't watch the Hatters every week, but everything you've done on there seems... I would not guess it's just been a year, to be honest with you. I would have presumed it's been a lot longer.
Yeah, it's something that I've really enjoyed. I find it Not necessarily easy, but it's quite nice that you can sit down, you're inside, you're very close to the court, and yeah, it's just like you're sort of with the players, and that you can kind of bounce off whoever you're commentating with, as well as the crowd, but also the players are just right there, and yeah, it's a fantastic sport.
So do you actually get involved with the players and other people, or are you kind of just there on the day, like commentate on what you see, commentate on what you've researched on, or do you get a mix in with the players a little bit?
Well, I've seen training. I'm down the kind of medical arena a lot, but it's commentary. I don't have a role under other than that, apart from a bit of the production of the streams. But it's an arena that very much is the centre of Sheffield basketball now. It's obviously been a bit tumultuous to say the least, with the venues for the Sharks and the Hatters. Playing at a college 2 years ago, the women's team. But now everyone's there. You get to know a lot of people, what they're like, without necessarily being involved with the club in any more than being there. It's really nice to get a feel of the place. So yeah, it's a long answer to your question, but basically not necessarily, but I do feel like I know the people around the club very well.
Yeah, well, I think your story is pretty similar to like a lot of people, because I think if people came out and said they'd watch the women's game for 15, 20 years, that's fine. But me personally, I've only been in it for 2 or 3 years, and obviously mine was from more the WNBA side when Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark came on the scene from the NCAA. That's kind of their rivalry made me watch it, and I think there's such a stigma around the women's game where they go, it's slow, it's not physical, they can't shoot. And then in reality, you come to watch these games, it's quicker than the man's game, it feels like at times.
Absolutely.
I feel like it's more physical because the way it seems like there's a less 3-point, especially in the English game, there's not as much 3-point shooting as say the NBA. They're not just throwing shots up there, they're getting in the paint, they're working each other. And I think it was Natasha Cloud of the New York Liberty came on a podcast earlier in the year, and she said, these people tell me it's not physical. Look at these bruises on my arm, and she showed it, and the scratches and bruises, and they're like, you don't realise, do you? But I suppose in a country where, like we said, it's primarily football and men's sport until now, it's kind of you listen to what people have told you until you actually physically watch the game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I brought my family along a few times across the season to kind of see what it was all about, and they all said they couldn't believe, kind of said it's bad to say, but I didn't expect it to be as good as it is. And I mean, obviously there's differences between the games, and the height difference especially makes it a slightly different game, but it certainly is really, really quality. And it's helped being able to see the Hatters every game this season.
Yeah.
Across the league, there's plenty of talent.
100%. Do you think as well with the emergence of the Auckland Wolves, because you said you've only been in a year, but the year before the Auckland Wolves weren't the best team in the league. Do you think their record and the emergence of them kind of overshadowed what the Sheffield Hatters did this year?
It was such a good team, the Hatters, but there was inconsistency, and that inconsistency was very, very rarely seen. I think across the league, because people saw at the end of the day, it's a win in the on the table. It's 2 more points. I think what the Wolves were, it was almost like a machine across the season. Obviously, they had the blips, but with the Hatters, it was a lot less polished for much of the season. I think we very much grew into it, despite the big wins. I think the best way of seeing that was comparing the result of the cup final and the performance of the cup final versus the playoff final. In that, I spoke to Emma Gandini after the semi-final against the Eagles, and she said we went into that cup final and we'd already lost. We already thought we're going to lose this game. You could tell, I think, being there, right on court side, which was brilliant, by the way. It was such a great experience. You could tell no one there felt like they were going to win in the pink jerseys. And particularly Georgia Gayle, I think, is very much, if she's good, the Hatters are going to win the game. And if she's not quite on it, then things change. And she wasn't on it at all. And that meant that the team around her were completely lost. Compare it to the playoff final, obviously first quarter we're thinking, is this same again? Are the Wolves still, miles better than everyone else? But actually it was only field goal percentage that was the big difference between the sides in that first quarter. And as soon as everything clicked, Georgia Gayle hit a couple of threes that completely changed the game. And everyone knew exactly what they were doing. I've said quite a few times in commentaries, there's no team that does a set play in this league like the Hatters. A lot of teams, they make the movement, someone around them has done something that they're not expecting and they completely lose it. That very, very rarely happens with the Hatters. We see very few turnovers of possession, and that was it. The Hatters just went on. And obviously Sam Ashby had an incredible fourth quarter. It was a lot closer than maybe it could have been, but it was just finally the Hatters being the machine. So yeah, I think with the Wolves being so good, it was quite exciting, obviously, a new team being so good. You know, a rebrand, plenty of new people coming in. Obviously, a lot of that is because of the situation with London and a lot of players moving over. So yeah, I think it's probably fair to say that it overshadowed for some of the season, but I think eventually a playoff winners in front of a crowd of about 8,000 in the country's capital, I think people realised actually these guys are pretty good in the end.
So since you said you were courtside, I guess I wasn't going to ask this question, but I'll go with it. The atmosphere for the women's game, obviously people came in beforehand who were going to watch the men's game later. How was that atmosphere? If we'll talk about the playoffs final specifically, how was that atmosphere, and is it something you expected for a women's game?
I mean, it's hard to say because it's putting it. I've never seen a women's game in a stadium that big. And when I say it's big, the O2, you walk in and you think, wow, this is massive. And then you realise there's a third tier as well. It really is massive. And I think how big it was sort of brought the noise down a little bit, because people are all around a massive arena. 8,000 in an arena that holds 9,000 people is very different to one that holds, I think it's about 16,000. And they were coming in slowly, and that made it quite a strange one. At the start, it felt like it wasn't quite ready for a game. However, it was amazing to see as many people there from teams across the league as there were. But I think there's still a lot that can be done to improve that. And I think, you know, we do our best with the streams, obviously. A lot of work has gone behind the scenes. It's not all gone well, but I think we've really improved the Hatters live streams this year. I think it's definitely up there with the best in the league. I don't think it's necessarily enough to keep it like that. I think we do need some help from outside, and that's how eventually you will start to get people there just for the women's game. Because I think that was the main thing. When there was a big three-pointer, let's say Georgie Gales just hit the second in 2 minutes, it's a wow from the crowd, but it's not necessarily a celebration, and that's the difference. You know, most people there are there just because they think, oh, there's a game on, I might as well. So I think it's a few years down the line before we start to see something that we can, you know, truly be proud of in the crowd. Having said that, having it at the O2 was fantastic, and it would have been fantastic for the players to be there rather than, you know, kind of medical arena, which is fantastic. You know, it shows what the big stage is really all about.
So, expanding on that, you say it's going to take a few years, obviously, to maybe create a bigger aura around, say, the women's game. Do you think the onus is on the league to maybe promote it more and provide more facilities or volunteers for the women's game? So, for example, I watched the Oaklands and Caledonia Gladiators semi-finals, and obviously that was on YouTube, and they didn't have any commentary at all. Do you think the league, or is it down to the club to maybe reach out to, say, like a university and say, do you have any volunteers you would like to run the program just to help us out? Because if you're watching a playoff semi-final and it's silent, and obviously it's in a gymnasium anyway at Oaklands, it kind of, you would like maybe a bit of commentary, a bit of sound, because you don't have that crowd. Do you think that's down on the league or the club, or what do you think personally could improve that?
It's a good question, and it's tough. You know, ultimately, can the league say, right, we've got a media team, we're going to send some commentators down? I don't know. I think it's more on the clubs. But do the clubs have the finances to do that? Do the clubs have the know-how to do that is the question. I agree. I've watched a fair amount of the Oakland's games this season, and you know, we saw a championship defeat to them late on, which basically swung it in their favour. And sometimes, you know, I think it's one of those VO cameras that just sort of automatically follows the ball. Sometimes it's not even following the ball. It is frustrating, and I do think it's down to the individual clubs at the moment. Because, I mean, do they push with DAZN and say, you know, could you come down and do some of the games? I think they absolutely could. Just doing the finals, it was positive, but more than that would be nice. As you say, I read your piece about the standout games for this season. We've got an incredible game right at the start, Hatters against Eagles. That is bang on, get the season going, get it on DAZN. People watch it, people get excited. It's a big opportunity. If the league did that, obviously it would be fantastic. But I don't think there's will for every single game to be shown. So yeah, it's a really tough one. Could they show the playoff semi-final? Of course they could. They could, but would it be worth it for them? So I think it's up to the clubs to build a world where DAZN actually wants to take the playoff semi-final. Because at the moment, I don't think they do.
Look, I mean, we live in a world of finances, don't we? And we're going to pick, as much as we want to argue about it and we'll argue about salaries and this and that, if the money's not there, it can't be done. But even if they are streaming on YouTube, maybe even if the clubs came together and said, look, we're promoting a product, would you like to lend a commentator we've had this season, just so there's a bit of atmosphere? Do you know, as we're building that up, it would have been nice to someone, and I get it, they might be bitter and they didn't want to because they didn't make it. I would hope not, because we're promoting I hate to call it a product, but that's kind of what it is. It would have been nice to have something, but I mean, quality-wise on the court, I think it's been a fantastic year. When you see people coming to the league, like, you know, the American college players who are coming over and maybe they see it as a stepping stone. Say, for instance, one of my favourites this year actually played for the Hatters when she was on the court, Taya Singleton. How did you feel her and Georgia Gayle's partnership developed over the year, and how vital do you think that was for the playoff final victory?
It was incredibly important to have. When she came in, she came in at a good time. Maddie Washington had just been put out of action, and it was good to see her on the court at the end of the season. But it meant there really wasn't that presence in the paint whatsoever. You know, we talk about Georgia Gayle, Laura Zolper as two smaller players, good outside on the perimeter, can hit the threes, fast. But their presence physically, it isn't really there, and that's probably the one thing that throughout the roster that there isn't those massive amounts of physicality in the paint. And Singleton came in, and I don't think any of us really knew what to expect when she came in, but just suddenly hitting 20 points, 30 points in a game. I think 34, 38 was the most she made in the season, and I think the sort of confidence that having her on the court gives to someone like Georgia Gayle is massive, because when the team isn't scoring the points that she wants them to score, Georgia Gayle then goes, okay, maybe I need to do a bit more myself. And she gets frustrated, and that's where the game changes. So having someone that she knows is, you know, going to get those rebounds, is going to score those points, it's huge for a team like the Hatters. However, I think there are excellent duos across the league that are far more important, because it's less of a stacked roster. And I think having someone like Naya Collier coming in with the amount of rebounds, 8.9 average per game, that brought a little bit of pressure off Singleton and meant she had to play less, and that's not something that every team can do. So absolutely it was important, and I think Singleton and Gayle allowed each other to shine massively, but I think it wasn't the be-all and end-all. Would we still have won the playoffs without one of them? I don't know, but we'd have been still in a pretty decent position, I think.
Yeah, I think partnerships are a big part of it. It's like we've seen it in Newcastle already, and we talk about the Hatters and the Eagles being such an amazing first game off the bounce. Obviously, Eagles coming off the best season ever, the Hatters winning the championship and having an amazing season of their own. But then you've got, and it happens every year, do you know what I mean? Players see this league as a bit of a stepping stone. We've already seen Jada Gwynn leave, and that breaks up their Hodges and Gwynn partnership. It was devastating for Newcastle at times, you know what I mean? That'll be a shame for the first game as well. But if we're talking about players that are leaving and we're on about them coming in and out, and we don't know what will happen with Singleton, hopefully she stays, but if she's so dominant, there's a chance she'll head overseas.
Yeah, for
sure. How important do you think it is that you keep a coach like Vanessa Ellis in place? Obviously, she got appointed in 2000. That's 25 years. And it seems like when you've got players coming in and out, you've still got that system there and the foundation to build off. How important do you think that is, especially in the women's game?
Well, there aren't many people like Vanessa Ellis in the world.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that. I mean, obviously, when you think of women's basketball in Sheffield, that family is just unbelievable. Starting out with Betty Cadona back in the 60s, the sport would not be where it is today without her, without the entire family. But Vanessa Ellis is, I don't know, there's a fire to her that it's hard to describe. But I think if I was a player and I'd come in, I was playing my first game, I'd been brought up from the academy, there's no one I'd prefer to have on my side than her. Because if anyone has a go at me, she's going to be on my side. And I think that's a big part of that team. It's an incredibly close, tight-knit squad from what I can see. And I'm obviously not as up close as players on the team obviously are, and as the coach and stuff are, but they certainly seem tight, and I think any of them would fight for her. I honestly do.
Do you get any insight into the team talks and the way she projects a message onto the team? How does that come across? Because obviously on the sideline, you can see clear as day she's a winner. She wants to win, and she'll do anything to motivate her players. So how does that come across in team talks, or do you have no insight into that?
Well, you can hear it, I can tell you that. You can tell for a couple of minutes when she wants a timeout as well. It's loud, but not necessarily angry. I think she holds herself together very well when she needs to. You certainly see frustration with the officials. Whenever there's a decision that doesn't go the Hatters' way, she makes sure you know about it. But it's that fight. I think she'd do that whether she genuinely believed it was the right call or not. And I think she knows when to sort of rein it in and say, right, I'm going to be hard on the players. And she is, from what I can tell. She certainly seems like she's always trying to be hard on the players, but in a positive way. And at the end of it, even after a loss, it doesn't look like they're angry at her for what she's said. I think they know that it's in the right place.
Yeah, I mean, you don't stay in the league that long if you don't have a good knowledge about the game, do you? It's not like she didn't play the game either. Obviously, she's played internationally for the Hatters, so it's obviously, I think that's the kind of person you want on your side. I just always wondered if, with players leaving, she's the best person to have in place where she just keeps the same system going, or she's clearly adjusted over time, because basketball changes. We're not in the same era all the time, so clearly it's a testament to her, really, isn't it? Like how long she's been in place for.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked this season a lot about how deep the squad is, but I think a lot of that is down to the coaching, because you can bring plenty of players on and they are very much a member of that squad. They play like the Hatters play, and there's a lot to be said for that, I think, because you're not always going to have players available. We've had a couple of injuries. I mean, we haven't seen Zolper for months, actually out on the court. Maddie Washington was out for a long time, captain of the side. Billingham, Deshayla, Wright Ponder both left mid-season to go to Luxembourg, and yet the team never looked weaker as a result. There was a little bit of a blip in February, I think it's fair to say, but every single game was the Hatters very much playing, no matter who was out on the court. You look at someone like Durham, and they've just left the league. You can see why. They've had to play players for over 30 minutes. They've got the kind of big three of players that have all played almost the entire game. The Hatters don't need to do that, and that's because there are so many players that play the way that Vanessa Ellis wants them to play. So I think it's an incredibly powerful thing to have, and I think Ty Singleton came in, was fantastic right off the bat, and a lot of that I think is down to having the right coach saying this is how we want you to play, and actually showing them how to play it.
Yeah, honestly, I watch her on the sideline. I'm like, like you said, it's someone you want in your corner. You can just tell from the off, can't you? So if we circle back to Georgia Gayle, this season she averaged 16.2 points, 5.3 assists, 1.7 steals, 4.6 rebounds, which is impressive for a small guard. She obviously she knows like you said, she can get frustrated, and you can see it in the game, but she knows how to help a team win games. So were you surprised when she was omitted from the EuroBasket squad? I know we watched the tournament, and it was like the coach struggled with rotation slightly. She didn't always pick the right team, but obviously had Holly Winterburn, Sam Ashby. They had a good, impressive guard fitting. But do you think Georgia Gayle could have elevated that squad slightly, just with her experience at international level, and obviously coming off the back of an MVP and winning the trophy? How much do you think she could have helped that side?
Yeah, it's always going to be hard as the head coach of a team where players are playing in leagues of very varying qualities. I think it's hard to know how good someone like Georgia Gayle is up against someone that's playing in Europe, someone that's playing at college level over in the States. But I do think, as you said, the experience at the GB level is huge. And for a side that's not really, you don't expect Great Britain to be doing fantastically well on the European stage, which means it's a lot of different players every single time, because we're always sort of trying to find the right sort of formula. You do need someone that says, right, hang on, no, you're part of this team. I think a lot of the players that were there over the summer were saying, right, this is a chance to show myself on the international stage. That wasn't, we're part of this squad. I think Georgia Gayle would know that. And she definitely adapted as a leader. And I do wonder whether that was partly down to Maddie Washington being injured for so long. She was stepping up as kind of the de facto captain. And eventually we saw a couple of times towards the end of the season, very few points. In fact, there was one where she hadn't made a single point in the first 3 quarters of a game. But I think she had something like 7, 8 assists. And she still looked like one of the best players out on the court. At the start even of this season, performance like that, she'd have been frustrated and she'd have kept trying to hit the threes. It wouldn't have worked. She's definitely got a head on her shoulders much more now than she did even 12 months ago. And I do think she would have been a big help to the side. I think it's the kind of personality you want, not just in the dressing room, but also out on the court. She's very loud and she's often saying to people, you're in the wrong place. And she just... There's no, oh, should I tell her? It's right, bang, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And for such an inexperienced squad, both together and also on the international stage, I think it would have been useful. But I do understand it's incredibly hard to understand which players are actually the right ones to put out on the roster.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's no doubt at GB. There's a very, very talented guard depth there, especially with Winterburn. I think Sam Ashby's fantastic. I think especially in that final against the Hatters, she was out of this world, but I just felt Gayle brought that experience. And obviously the Golden State Valkyries have found themselves a star in Temi Fagbanlier this year, who has been... I'm buzzing for her over there, because it seems like she's hopped about in the WNBA a bit, and now she's found a good squad in Golden State Valkyries. They're one of my favourite teams to watch, so I couldn't wait for her to come to EuroBasket and maybe pair up with some of the Super League basketball women players. So it was a shame, but obviously, like you say, the rotations can be hard. I would have liked to see it in there for the experience and the matchups that you could have brought. So now we'll talk about...
See, it was an experienced team.
Yeah, 100%. We'll talk about the civil. I know I said before the podcast, but obviously people can't hear it. We're going to try and stay clear of the civil war in British basketball at the minute, because I'm sick of the back teeth of it. No one wants it. We're trying to get excited for the season, and it's constant. But I will bring up one thing. The British Basketball Fan Association obviously brought out open letters that asked for responses, and eventually they got one from the GBBL Limited, from Marshall Glickman's consortium. And one thing that caught my eye was this quote here that said, when asked about are they ready to work with the women's game, it is they hope so. And then they finished by saying it's more specifically focused on the men's league. So to me, that felt like they could have given maybe I get that it's not down on them, but to say they haven't been in contact with the women's game or maybe have a plan to incorporate it, that worries me a bit. And obviously you've got people out there who are earning a wage. The kind of maybe that puts them on edge. It might send them overseas. How worrying do you find a statement that a new consortium that isn't being accepted in the first place hasn't considered the women's game in the plans?
Well, reading it for the first time, I couldn't quite believe that they hadn't even tried to pretend that they tried to do anything.
Exactly, yeah.
It was a across the board, quite an arrogant statement, I thought. And from the SLB side, it was a lot more, we get that we're not perfect. I don't think their responses were perfect all the way through. I think they know that this season wasn't as good as it could have been. I mean, the fact that the Cup had 4 clubs in this season on the women's side, I think they'll know that wasn't the right way to do it.
Raises questions, doesn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely, and the fact that we're losing a team already after 1 season in its current guise is obviously a massive worry. But it's hard to really know what this is actually going to do to the women's game, because in theory, we could just have GBBL as the men's league and then SLBW as the women's league. But then, where does the money come from? Because obviously, a team like the Hatters, we're probably quite lucky that the money is there. And would the money be there without the Sharks being a part of the same organisation? Probably not. And I think certainly for a couple of years, we're going to have to kind of piggyback off any success of the men's league, just because that's where the finances are at the moment. And are the finances going to be there for a standalone league? I'm not so sure. So,
well, that's the thing, is that you've got a lot of clubs that are, say the Eagles are as well. Look, there's a lot of clubs that are subsidised by the men's team, which is great. But when you hear that, I don't think there's any world, shape or form that the men's teams leave the Super League basketball unless for some reason FIBA steps in and there becomes a big compromise. But again, I hope not, because I feel like it's going to become so franchise-based. I feel like you're going to lose a lot of them clubs anyway. And I think the women's game might just go out adrift, because I feel like American, and this is, I am no businessman, I am no expert, so don't quote us on it. But I think when it comes to Americans, and we see it in the Premier League, that money is a big factor of what they want. So it's why everything's so franchise-based. They want a guaranteed income. And does the women's game bring that? Not currently. Could it in the future? We don't know, but we hope so, because I think the quality is there. But the problem is now with this, in the way I feel like you're going to have players that are going overseas to Europe, to these leagues that are seen as the better standard.
Yeah, no, I agree. And another thing, I think obviously women's sport is booming at the moment. We've seen, especially with women's football, it's huge. There's no two ways about it. It's become massive. But that is because football is so big. You know, if football itself wasn't so big in the UK, would we have, you know, the women's game being so big? I don't know. Are enough people getting into basketball to have loads of women playing basketball? Not at the moment. So I think we need British basketball as a whole to have more and more people coming to watch it, more and more people getting involved and not just having fun with it, because we know that it's the second most played sport in this country. But are enough people actually going to say, actually, I want to do this for the rest of my life? Not really. And that's how I think we grow the women's game. We show, you know, young girls, this sport is for you as well. Currently, we don't have a league that's big enough. People can't watch women's basketball on TV at the moment, unless they've got the DAZN app or the YouTube app, which isn't the same.
Exactly.
They can't watch it. And if that isn't there for 5 more years, as you say, it probably will drift. And that does worry me. I think it needs the men's league to do well as well, because I think that's where the eyes are now that we've got DAZN. It was Sky Sports. I don't know what's going to happen with the GBBL. Obviously, they said they want 1 game a year free to view. Is that going to help?
Well, that's not growing the game of basketball straight away, is it? It kind of totally diverts away from the point. It's crazy. It's nothing.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the visibility isn't currently there. And if it's even more fractured, the visibility is going to be there even less. If we have, you know, as an example, if you're a Sheffield Sharks fan, you bring your family, your young girl's come to the game and she's enjoyed it, and she knows that there's a women's team that plays in the same place, she might say, well, I want to watch that. And then she might say, I want to play as well. If you have men's clubs and it's just the men and there's no women's team alongside them, that's then gone as well. And there's a lot of ways for people to get into the sport that are suddenly lost if there's a big fragmentation of the sport between the men's and women's game as well. So I am worried, but, you know, Oakland's have done very well on their own.
Well, there you go, exactly.
So,
I think
who knows?
you raised a couple of really good points there as well. I think grassroots level is going to be vital. But like you said, the YouTube and the DAZN app, and DAZN it's growing as well. It's not like it's been around for 20, 30 years, so I get that. But do you feel like women's sport isn't watched as much because people don't like it, or do you feel like it's because the opportunity isn't there to actually watch it? I see an argument rang about the African Cup of Nations all the time. Use this as an example. People say nobody wants to watch that, but I remember being in school and this kills us, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, and it was on ITV. And I loved it. It was great. It was new. It was fresh. There was an opportunity to watch it. You were obsessed because there was players you'd never seen before. There was a different style, a different brand. Do you feel like if women's football, basketball was given basketball is given more of an opportunity, and maybe on the actual DAZN channel, more eyes would turn to it?
I mean, I love football, and I will watch any football. You've mentioned African Cup of Nations. I love African Cup of Nations.
I love it.
I'll watch Copa America. I'll watch Copa Libertadores. I'll watch the 10th division of football if it's available. So yeah, I completely agree with you. If that's on DAZN, you can't tell me that a fan of the Sheffield Sharks isn't going to just watch the Sheffield Hatters because it's there. If, you know, Newcastle Eagles against Leicester Riders women's game, 2 massive clubs, if they see that on Sky Sports, and they're going to click on it because they love basketball. They don't just love their own team. They love the sport. But as you say, if you click on to watch the Oakland's Wolves home games, and I don't want to keep, hitting them while they're down. It's a fantastic club. They've done some really, really good stuff. The streaming isn't there yet, and a lot of streams aren't there yet. If you switch on to that, you're going to turn it off because it's not an easy watch. If you've got Sky Sports there, with all the streaming equipment, with the proper commentators, with some crowd noise being properly fed into the stream, you're far more likely to watch it. But yeah, if it's not available at all, no one's going to watch it because they can't.
No, I think you bring up some good points there as well. With the men's and women's teams, obviously we're talking about them being subsidised. What do you feel about the London Lions thriving? And by the way, their rebrand is awesome. I seen their badge yesterday and I was like, oh my God. I don't love badges and I'm not into like kits and stuff like that, but I was like, oh my God, I'm throwing a like on that. That is tremendous. What do you feel about this rebrand with the London Lions and obviously bringing in such big players and going into the Euro Cup again? What do you feel about the London Lions women team being at the bottom of the pile? How do you feel? Do you think London Lions maybe have a responsibility to work on that, or do you think they'll solely focus on the European ambitions?
I am into badges and kits, and I am so glad they're not just going to have LDN
Yeah,
from
it
now.
is so good.
I am so glad. It's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, it's a massive shame that with how good the team was last year, winning in Europe, that obviously it was a big rebuild. There's no doubt about that. It was a massive rebuild. It's a real shame that they only seem to have looked at the men's team. I went to the game away at Barking Abbey to watch the Hatters. Good fun. It was very odd, having been at a basketball arena for home games, seeing a game at a school, not even a college, a school. And obviously there's the history behind the school, and it's such an important one within both basketball and football as well. It's got a really good pedigree for bringing players up throughout the area, and it's a cool venue, and it's one that's rooted in the history of the place. However, seeing games at the Copper Box is completely different to seeing a game in Barking at a school. And it's not easy to get to Barking as well, I'll tell you that. And it's a long way outside of London. If you're a fan, you're from London, central area, are you going to make the effort to go to Barking? Probably not. If it's in central London, if it's at the Copper Box, then you probably are. But it's really sad. You look at the sort of league leaders for stats, there isn't a single player from the Lions really anywhere there, and you can see it was done on the cheap. And look, I feel really, really bad for the players, because we were there as part of a crowd of probably about 50. It deserves a lot more than that. It's a team in the capital of the country. They deserve to be playing in front of more than 50 people, and they deserve the backing of the club to allow them to do that. I do worry that if the men's team had gone on and won everything, fair enough. Won the championship, slowed a little bit towards the end of the season, and they were just sort of leapfrogged in terms of quality at the end of the season. I think Leicester, the Sharks beat them as well pretty comfortably at our place at the Cannon Medical Arena. And I worry that they're going to go, okay, well, we need to throw more money at it then. But they're going to look at that and go, actually, we were really close. They're going to look at the women's team and say, we lost every single game this season. What's the point of even trying at this point?
Yeah,
so I don't know.
I think it's just a massive shame, because like you say, that arena looks awesome. Like, obviously, like when you watch so many women's games, people who are listening might not. I hope they do this year. But when you're watching the women's games, sometimes you see it in a gym, and you're obviously there for the basketball, but then you turn to the London Lions game, you're like, all right, here we go. And the quality just isn't, it's not quite the same, is it? It's a massive shame, because they've got so much to build off. They've got good backers, and it just, like you say, I think they will stick to the men's team for, again, obvious reasons, because we're talking about finances, we're talking about the world we live in. It makes sense in their eyes, but I would love them just to go, do you know what it is? Let's go all in on this women's team. Let's do what Auckland's done. Let's go for a rebuild, and we can challenge at the top. I don't know if that's the direction it's going to go, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, well, Oakland's have shown that it's possible to build a lot in one off season. So have the Eagles, to be fair. So much better this year than last. But yeah, I don't know whether they're going to want to do that. With how mad everything is with Europe, with the British game, with obviously a huge number of players leaving, a huge number of players presumably coming in, as we've had a lot reported but not confirmed. It looks like they're already very much gearing up for a big season for the men. Oakland's didn't really get too much from it, I would imagine, financially, from being so good this year, even though they probably should have. Do they deserve it? Yes, absolutely. They've had an incredible year. They deserve some finances to be able to build on that. I don't think they'll have made a lot. I don't know what the finances are in terms of prize money. I don't think the Lions are going to think there's much point, especially while they're at a school. Is it going to grow crowds of more than about 100? I don't think there's space.
Definitely not, especially when people are going to look at it as going to go into women's sports, when you've got Chelsea doing so well in the football, and then you've got a choice to go watch the London Lions. And unfortunately, it's the way the world works. They're going to go for a team that's thriving rather than languishing at the bottom of the league. It's a shame, but I hope, you never know, maybe there'll just be crazy in the thinking and go, here we'll get you 5 or 6 players and we'll see how that works. But again, it might be another reason why we've got to focus on grassroots some more, because London is such a big community. You'd think there must be some talented girls around there, do you know what I mean, where you can promote them from the youth. But again, that's on the clubs maybe to set up a system similar to football, where you've got an academy system and you get them from young and you develop them into your style. There's a lot of focus to be done. I do hope to improve on it.
Yeah, the accessibility of the club currently is not there. You need academy facilities more central, easier to get to. You need games to be more easy to get to. And you know, if your first experience of women's basketball is at a school with a shot clock that's on the floor with a big every time someone scores,
it's not ideal, is it?
It's incredibly annoying. It sounds like the game's ended every single time anything changes on the board. It's not going to keep you. Go into a game at the Copper Box. That probably will. So, you know, I think the accessibility is the main thing that needs to change. In terms of bringing a few fantastic players in, even if they were to win the league this year, is it really going to change the general consensus of the public around the side? Probably not. I think things need to be done off-field. And I guess it's down to, you know, would you prefer a good team or would you prefer the growth of the fan base?
Yeah. Well, I think it's something definitely that needs to be considered. Let's move on to something more positive, eh? Let's go for that. So we've obviously got the rise of 3x3 basketball at the minute. So this is a fun one to end on, I hope. Rise of 3x3 basketball, and then obviously we've just had the World Cup in Mongolia, which was, do you know what it is? It's something I've never considered until the Olympics. And I love 3x3 basketball. It feels urban, it feels a bit more street, it feels like the players have a bit more ability not just to work off a playbook. I loved it. But if you had a choice, so we're going to stick with the SLDW for this one. So you've got we're going to stick with a 3-woman roster. Each player you select it's got to be from a different club. So for example, for my 3, I've picked Jada Gwynn from the Eagles. I've gone Georgia Gayle from the Hatters, and Danny Williams, who was, well, I haven't even mentioned her, and she was unbelievable for Manchester basketball this year. Which 3 do you think would pick and dominate a 3x3 league?
Well, I think Danny Williams has to be in there. She has her own shot. You know, the Danny Williams shot, the 3 from right in the corner, hits it almost every single time. And certainly against the Hatters, we played very compact defensively. She was just having a field day on the perimeter, which means I think there's space for someone in the paint, and I think Danny Williams would pull the defence away and allow opportunities further inside. And I'm going to name another player that we haven't said, Lauren Saiki.
My God, how have I not?
I absolutely love Lauren Saiki. She is absolutely fantastic. I've never seen someone look like they have so little emotion out on a court as well. It's just business. But she is good everywhere. There's no one that I don't think there's another guard in the league that drives and creates the space on the perimeter as well as she does.
Do you know what I say about
having
her
the presence
as well?
of mind.
Sorry, what I say about her as well, it doesn't matter if she's racking up the stats. She's somehow involved in it. It's a clear example.
Absolutely.
The box score doesn't always matter. She is. I'm glad you said her, because she is an unbelievable player.
Yeah, and she does have the stats, to be fair to her. 7.5 assists per game. It is
Not
incredible. Bad. And if we have those 2, I suppose we need someone that's pretty consistent with the 2s. I suppose it could be Tyre Singleton.
Well, you've not got a Hatter in there, so that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, I feel like I have to, but I'll give an honourable mention to Nina Crisper for how good she is with the 2s. She just keeps the points ticking along every single time. You think we're kind of dropping out of the game a little bit. She hits a couple of 2s and we feel like we're all right again. You put me on the spot. I'm trying to think of someone else that
I had to throw one at you.
That has that same kind of ability, I think. Maria Blaszczewski, I think I've said the name right there. I think she's probably the same kind of player that could bring a couple of 2s out, she'd draw some fouls. But I think that's a pretty good mix of players there. If we
Tell you one that I had,
Lauren Saiki.
I had one on the bench because I was going to do 4 players, but then I thought that really is putting you on the spot. It's a player that I don't think gets sorry about that. It's a player that I didn't think got as many mentions as she should this season. She's for the Cardiff Met Archers. Connie Clark, I really enjoyed watching her play.
Yes, I've got some stats for Connie Clark as well.
Go on, whip them out, I dare
you. She incredibly, I think she might have had the most average rebounds in the league, or maybe she was in the top few. 9.7 rebounds on average, which is unbelievable, alongside 16.6 points. per game. But yeah, I mean, she's a two-way threat for sure, and we haven't necessarily thought too much about the defensive side of things. I think definitely she's an excellent player as well. And it's not easy to be so good in a team that's not been very good this season.
Yeah,
I think there was kind of a couple of rankings that we can have. We can have the best teams, Oakland's and Sheffield, and then we've got Newcastle, Caledonia, Manchester, and I think they're probably just below that in kind of a third grouping. And they don't have a huge number of excellent players. She certainly shone when there wasn't necessarily anything around her the same. So yeah, I mean, putting 16.6 points up per game in a team that finished 9th.
It was just below where they should have been, like I say. It was between Manchester, Caledonia, and then off the top of my head, I can't think now, because I just remember Manchester and Caledonia being nearer the bottom end of the playoffs. So
it's a good shout defensively, Connie Clark, for sure. And she's got the name C. Clark as well.
That's how we'll get everyone to the league, then we'll just constantly
hashtag
we say, look, every game.
We've got C. Clark playing for the team. Come down, watch it.
Well, just as we've been speaking about an hour ago, Caitlin Clark is out of the All-Star game at the WNBA, so there you go.
Really?
Yeah,
there you go.
Another groin injury, there you go. Right, well, I must say, Ollie, I really enjoyed that, mate. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, no worries at all. It's been my pleasure, and it'd be good to see you for one of these again.
Hopefully we'll get you on further down the line. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of popularity, which I'm hoping we will do, and we'll get you on when we get a few more viewers. So if you do want the show to continue, we'll have a like, subscribe and comment on YouTube, and hopefully we'll be getting it out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts Saturday at 8 o'clock. We're hoping about them. Alright, so thank you for joining us, and this was the Britsdontjump first ever show. Thank you very much for joining.